What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OG GM. It's Saturday. It's 10 o'clock. It's the 29th day of October 2022. Halloween is almost upon us, so please be safe this weekend and Monday, because we know things get a little crazy around here in OG GM land on Halloween. And I'm joined by both cats today. If you want to take a look at both the cats while we talk. So today we are addressing the Is D&D Dead that's going around. This started a couple days ago. I assume it's a result of either the whole $60 million loss that Hasbro suffered, or just another aspect of the bizarre what is and isn't D&D canon, and whether the OSR is helping D&D or killing D&D. So, is D&D dead? Can Hasbro cancel D&D? So, yeah, we have some more news regarding the $60 million Q3 loss that Hasbro suffered this year. They are $60 million down projected from what they made this time last year, which is, of course, completely understandable considering where we were this year. Time last year, people were at home spending money on D&D and other Magic and stuff like that. But since that time, inflation has skyrocketed, production costs have skyrocketed, shipping costs have skyrocketed, inflation is a thing, big box retail is losing out to direct sales, digital retail like Amazon. All these things affect Hasbro's overhead. So a lot of people want to put the entire blame on Wizards of the Coast and how D&D killed the game. D&D is dying. D&D product isn't selling, which is true. Therefore, the $60 million is all Wizards of the Coast's fault. Ha, ha, ha. You can't blame all of it on Wizards of the Coast. You can blame a lot of it on Wizards of the Coast, but it's not all Wizards of the Coast's fault. I mean, you have to take into account that this time last year, the world was a complete... Oh, look at Steve. He's carrying his ball. The world was a completely different place. You know, COVID was still a thing, and all these other factors were pushing Dungeons and Dragons. Those factors are gone. I mean, between 2018 and 2021, it was just a perfect storm of positive and negative press. D&D could do no wrong. It was on everybody's lips, thanks to Stranger Things, and then Critical Role, and then just the cascade of everybody else trying to be the next Critical Role, plus COVID, plus D&D online games, plus people getting back to D&D because, well, I'm home and I haven't played this game in a long time, but this is a great way for me to get in touch with their friends. Magic made a ton of money last year, again, because people had nothing to do. 2022 has been a horrible year for Magic. It seems like they just make a mistake after mistake after mistake. Misinterpreted ban lists, shortened card runs, an entire card run that was defective. Is that a word? Defective card run? Can you say defective in terms of Magic the Gathering cards? Misprints. Misprints is the word. An entire run that was misprints. Spoilers that were incorrect. And then, of course, this whole $1,000 30th anniversary Magic set. Plus, paper is harder to get. Trees are dying off. There are 20% less trees in the world now than they were this time 10 years ago. Okay? It's because of all the fires and the environment changing. So trees make paper. Paper makes cardboard. Cardboard makes Magic cards. So all that's more expensive. So yes, Wizards of the Coast took a huge chunk. There was a lot of money invested in pushing D&D. A lot of D&D titles that Wizards of the Coast sort of expected to be huge that weren't, because Wizards of the Coast was aiming at a target audience that didn't really exist. You know, and the people that Wizards of the Coast was getting the most positive and negative press from weren't really people who were buying. I know we had a lot of these people who would come in and Twitch and show themselves holding a copy of Radiant Citadel, buy my merch, and be like, look at me, I'm so-and-so, I'm a YouTube influencer, I'm holding a copy of Strixhaven. But it turns out those people never read Strixhaven. They never even bought it. They went into game stores, picked up the product, took a picture of themselves holding the product, and then put it back down without giving the store any credit. Now, I know this is true because I've been contacted by multiple game store owners, including one from Philadelphia, and 3 from California who told me this is happening. So all those Twitter influencers who were saying all these things about Strixhaven, Radiant Citadel, stuff like that, they didn't actually play it. They didn't actually even read it. They just would go into the stores and pick it up. So there was this huge expectations that D&D modules and D&D adventures would sell this year, and they didn't. D&D had an abysmal sales year. You don't have to believe me. You can just look at the facts. You can just talk to any local game store owner or even some of the big box retailer owners and ask them about the copies of Strixhaven that are still sitting on the shelves. The copies of Radiant Citadel are still sitting on the shelves. The whole mess up with Spelljammer, was that a mistake or was it on purpose? I mean, Spelljammer shipping is delayed because of the whole Space Monkeys thing. D&D things are just sitting on the shelves. The books, I mean, the figures and the dice, those are still selling, and then, let's face it, those are per pure profit. Then there was the whole controversy after controversy after controversy, just one after another. Wizards of the Coast got hit in the face with controversies, plus multiple lawsuits between them and TSR 3.5, and multiple lawsuits against them, allegations of other things, people inappropriate things, the Satine Phoenix thing, which blew up in their face. It was just a horrible year for Wizards of the Coast. So yes, a large chunk of that $60 million profit loss is their fault because they gambled on a non-existent fan base. You have that shallow end of the 5e pool who are on YouTube and saying these horrible things about the OSR and about each other. And, it percolated over. We reached a point where even Jeannie D, the current, face of 5e propaganda, is going, yeah, no, I don't like the way the direction's going, So they took a gamble with Strixhaven, with Ravenloft, with Radiant Citadel, with Spelljammer, and they didn't sell. So as a response to this loss, Wizards of the Coast is losing employees. It's getting restructured. Major individuals are being replaced with brand new individuals. Hasbro is rethinking. More and more, you're hearing Hasbro mentioned in relation to Magic or D&D as opposed to Wizards of the Coast. Plus, Crawford is just cringy, and he's getting a lot of negative press. So over the past week, we've seen a lot of, is D&D dying? Is D&D going to get canceled? Apparently people loved my little meme about, the Hasbro police, how I was saying, like, Hasbro police are not going to kick open your door and go, get on the floor, bitch, you're playing D&D wrong. Apparently people love that. So yeah, D&D isn't dead. Wizards of the Coast might be dead, but D&D can't die. And Hasbro can't cancel D&D. It will never be as popular as it was between 2018 and 2020. But that's okay, because it's had bad years before. I mean, there's been huge chunks of time when D&D was an afterthought. 80s and early 90s, people were playing Rifts and GURPS and Vampire and superhero role-playing games and Cyberpunk. I went 4 years at college without playing a single D&D game. GURPS was everywhere. And when I came back to LA, people were playing Magic and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They weren't playing other games, and they were playing GURPS, and they were playing Marvel superheroes and Villains and Vigilantes. So there was like from 1984 to 1989, I didn't play any D&D. And from 1989 to 2002, with the exception of TJ Storm's Company of the Bull Sunday game, 15-year-long Advanced Dungeons & Dragons / 3rd edition D&D game, nobody was playing D&D. People were playing other games. Rifts was huge. GURPS was huge. So it's not the first time D&D has lost popularity. And I think it would be D&D's best interest to lose popularity again. I mean, it's all but certain that Mercer's going to cut ship and make his own game in some form. There's tons of competition against 5e right now. 5e is being combobulated into whatever one D&D is going to end up being in 2024. So it's always going to exist. Wizards of the Coast might continue to be downsized and restructured, as we've seen over the past 3 years, but D&D dying, No. Wizards of the Coast canceling the game, they can't. You can't cancel dice rolling. There's always going to be people with dice and paper and go, hey, let's just, play a quick game of whatever. It's not going to look like it looks now, but that's, it's evolved so many hundreds of times and no two games look the same. So of course it's going to evolve again. It's not going to die. It's not going to go away. Even if Wizards of the Coast shelved it now, if the Wizards of the Coast CEO said, if Hasbro said, we're done. We're shelving D&D. Okay, you're not making one D&D. The bad press is just too much. We're losing too much money. We're shelving the title. We're going to keep it on the shelves for a couple of years and see what happens. Hasbro's done this with other titles. There would still be D&D money coming in. Not counting the movie, which may or may not make money. It probably will break even if nothing else. But, there's so many things that have a connection to Dungeons and Dragons. Dice, figures, maps, adventures, third party. 5e third party products are huge right now and are winning awards. So even if Hasbro shelved D&D right now, there would be a non-stop trickle of D&D money going into Hasbro's coffers for years to come. It might not be what they made last year, but years to come. So there's no reason for Hasbro to cancel it. And they really can't cancel D&D. They can't kill D&D. They can kill Wizards of the Coast, but they can't kill D&D. It's out there and will always exist in some form. Maybe not the form it exists now, but so what? It's not the same as it existed 2 years ago, and it's always constantly evolving and changing. But Hasbro can't cancel it. D&D isn't dead. Is Wizards of the Coast dead? Well, Wizards of the Coast, as we know it, definitely is going through some major evolution and restructuring. It's already been restructured once when it got disevolved and then turned into one of the three branches that makes up Hasbro, the digital branch, because Hasbro knew 4 years ago that they were taking D&D into the digital marketplace long before any of us did. But I was like, yeah, they're going to go digital. And people are like, oh, shut up. That's not going to happen, OGGM. You're such a scrub. You don't know what you're talking about. D&D will never go digital. And I was like, then why did they restructure it into the digital? Yeah, now it's going digital. It's already restructured. Then it was restructured again. They just moved offices and they placed it in a new building farther away from where it used to be. So there's less connection between Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. And 3 members of the, Wizards of the Coast major heads gone, replaced by Microsoft people. More and more you're hearing Hasbro mentioned in the articles and the media in connection to D&D and Magic instead of Wizards of the Coast. Recently you had the whole Lego thing, and it's Hasbro presents. Hasbro judges. The Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary $1,000 debacle. Hasbro presents. The new other things, like yesterday they announced they are making a new line of D&D toys, transforming dice that turn into D&D monsters. Hasbro presents. And let's face it, one D&D is not receiving the popularity Wizards of the Coast thought it would. So, yeah, I can see that Wizards of the Coast will continue to be restructured and shrunk. I think the next step we're going to see is we're going to see less of Crawford and probably more of Perkins for a while, or maybe not either of them and someone else will become the new face of Wizards of the Coast. I would guess I'm predicting that by 2024, by the release of 1 D&D, Perkins and Crawford will either become very, very rarely seen or gone, or Crawford will find his position replaced with another Microsoft person because Hasbro is restructuring Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast has gone from a money-making, big, face popularity thing to sort of an eyesore, sort of a, you went too far. Okay, the whole Me Too, inclusion, diversity, racism, let's make D&D for everybody thing. You took that idea, and this goes back to my theory that everything Wizards of the Coast does made sense at one point in time. all this bullshit that's been coming out of their mouths since before Tasha about inclusion and woke or whatever you want to call it. And Hasbro's going, yeah, you took this idea and maybe it was a good idea. I don't know, but it's turned into a really more negative than positive. There's more negative. I said this yesterday. There's more negative net sums coming out of what Wizards of the Coast has done with 5e and Magic. And again, Magic had a horrible year in 2022. I mean, misprints and rules and just, oh, God. So, yeah, I don't think D&D is dead. And I don't think Hasbro can cancel D&D. Wizards of the Coast, on the other hand, days might be numbered. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Let me know what you think about the future of the product as we move forward towards the end of the very weird 2022. And while you're thinking about it and thinking about money and supporting and holidays, buy my merch! West Coast Grognard Fashion line only on Teespring, and the OGGM Fistful of Minions Adventure line only on Big Geek Emporium only for 2022. Jump on the bandwagon, get ahead of everybody else. Don't get even, get paid. West Coast Grognard Fashion line, OGGM merch, support, subscribe, have a great weekend, stay safe because it's some holiday on Monday. Till then, see ya!